Hey guys, welcome back to another video, another week of Premier League football, game week 4, and I had to get a Spurs fan on today because the Ange Ball revolution is pretty much on the lips of most football fans these days, hence this wonderful gentleman alongside me here, Flav from the Fighting Cock, and of course Jaffin and loads of other things. You must be happy today, mate. Is it a beautiful Monday morning for you?
Yeah, it's a beautiful Monday. Well, to some degree, obviously, Arsenal winning took the shine off it to some degree, but I won't allow them to impact how I feel about my football club, which is as good as I felt in many, many years. Probably around 2016 was the last time we was, as a fan base, as hopeful as we are right now, and that's all down to that man, Ange Postecoglou. We thought that he would have an impact. We knew that he would change the feeling around the football club, and he was tasked with changing the mood in the dressing room and the philosophies that are instilled by the players and the club as a whole.
Yeah.
But we didn't realise we'd see it so quickly. This brand of football is something we've been crying out for. All fans of all clubs want to see it. You know, you've been seeing it for years under Pep, but it's not something that everybody gets to enjoy, unfortunately. And so Spurs fans are absolutely buzzing, and I'm definitely buzzing for what might happen this season.
Mike in the chat saying the king of slugs as I live and breathe. Mike's obviously a fan. So basically, if you're not familiar with this series, by the way, guys, it's this sort of new thing where I chat about the Premier League clubs going on. Of course, getting a different fan from different teams every single week. And as we just touched on right then, today feels like a Spurs kind of episode. Because did you know a lot about? Obviously, loads of people knew his name and stuff like that. But what was your expectations when he came? Because he's relative, not known as such, but you know what I mean. He wasn't like a high profile manager before he came to the Premier League.
His route to the Premier League is very unconventional. It probably never happened before. So it might have happened before the Premier League formed, but certainly in the modern era of football, yeah. So, I mean, I was aware of him once Celtic made him manager, and even them getting him was a bit of an odd sort of acquisition because their fans felt the same as Spurs fans, which was, is he ready for this job of this size? Because his heritage is in Australia and Japan. And it's an example for football fans that perhaps, European football isn't the mecca, and there is talent outside of Europe, certainly in playing and managerial and coaching staff. So, I hadn't heard a huge amount about him, but what I had heard and what I'd seen at Celtic was that he was playing expansive, beautiful football. And you got to remember when he took over at Tottenham, where we were. And that's essentially Conte setting fire to the house every day, and us, and we're inside, right? And it's horrible.
It's really hot. You know what I mean?
It's really bloody hot and uncomfortable. And he's going, "You deserve this. This is what you want, right? This is what you brought me here to do." It was
mental, wasn't it? Looking back, how willingly he was just to sort of ruin everything. And lashing out at everyone left, right, and centre. I know there's the whole Spursy thing, but that even felt like peak Spurs for the Spursy thing because Conte was just mental, absolutely mental there. What's he even up to now, Conte? Is he managing another team now? I don't even know. I'm just like,
no, he's not, and that doesn't surprise me because towards the end it felt like he was. If he wasn't sabotaging it, to some degree, he was going off the rails. And you shouldn't forget that he lost his best friend. Right, his best friend died while he's I forgot his name. Vetrioni, I think he is. He's basically his fitness coach and one of his coaching staff, but he'd been with him through football up until this point. Okay. Wherever he's managed, this guy went with him, and he died of cancer last year during the Spurs season. In fact, there's a tree that's planted for him near our training ground. So that's how recent it was. And since then, and you can completely understand it.
Yeah.
He was impacted. Then he got sick, and then he had to have an operation. And then he was away for 8 weeks in Italy while Stellini took over. But it just felt like it was unraveling for many reasons. It felt like it was unraveling. And, he's always been a fiery character, but that 3-3 draw against Southampton last year was the straw that broke the camel's back. But the biggest issue that Spurs fans had with Conte was, surely we can play better football than what we're getting with these bunch of players. And what he was saying is they're not good enough. This team isn't good enough. It doesn't have the right mentality. It doesn't have the ability to play attacking football. We have to protect our weakest assets, and we have to have a low block and play counter-attacking football. That was a message I'm paraphrasing, but that's kind of what it felt like as a fan. And within 2 months, Postecoglou's got effectively, well, it's not the same squad because he's chopped so many out, but he's got us playing in a way that Conte couldn't and wouldn't. And reality is, football seems to have passed that era of manager by. And certainly if you want to play good football and you want to look to win things, it's this mould that Pep probably built that fans, that clubs, managers of other clubs have adapted or have tweaked. But fundamentally, it's that sort of aggressive front foot, leaving everything into the attack style of football that Postecoglou seems to have followed. But he's his own man, obviously. But
yeah, of course, yeah. And the thing is, you're right to extent as well. Like, fully, like the speed that he's turned it around is, I think it's testament to him. I mean, it's weird because like there's not a single clip I see of Postecoglou where I'm like, oh, I wish he was my dad, and my dad's great. You know, he's just like, like he's just that charismatic. When you watch him, you're like, I love you, Dad. I'm a real dad if you're watching this. But this guy, you watch him, he's just so charming, like immensely charming. Where you can't help but be drawn in by, his personality, and there's a refreshingness as well to how he talks to the media, where he sort of like he takes the mick, but in a kind of inclusive way. Like he's just like he talks to everyone in the room like they're his mate, as you know that he's already becomes like a catchphrase of his mate at the end of every sentence. But like it must be like. Was it? I got a sense from the Spurs fans I follow online. It was sort of like love at first sight because there's a real charm to him, isn't there?
Yeah. You can't help, as a human being, you can't help but sort of fall in love with him. You're right. And like I said, he's the way he conducts himself is very blunt and very black and white, and he says what he means. And I've said before, but with Conte, you really did have to sort of read between the lines and try and understand what he was saying. And while the football isn't great, that isn't a good place to be in, because not only do you have the football, but you also have the press conference to look forward to. And the whole thing ended up being a bit of a bin fire. With Postecoglou, he's simply saying, "What do you want a direct answer to your question? Ask me and I will answer it." And that's so rare in football because it really doesn't benefit a manager to answer things directly, typically, right? He may want to confuse the press or lead them down a path in order to pursue a different agenda. And managers do it all the time. It's a standard thing. It's like, Arsene Wenger, for example, back in the day would say, I didn't see any incident that would go against his team. It doesn't benefit him to comment on it, so he didn't. But with Postecoglou, he does. And that's not to say it's right. It's just to say that's his way of doing it, and it's refreshing. So, I mean, and what you mentioned about his relationship with the media, but I found there is a line to his familiarity. There's a line to how close he's allowing these journalists to get in, and he kind of really manages that well. A case in point was when he talked about a podcast he listened to. You know what? I was desperate.
I saw this line. Yeah, go for it.
He's going. I was listening to this podcast, and he was talking about X, Y, and Z. I can't remember what it was. And I was hoping for him to go, I think it was called The Fighting Cock. But no, it was Louis Theroux or something like that.
Well, until he says no, it's obviously, it could be. You never know. Oh, it was Louis Theroux, actually, fair enough. Yeah, go on.
And the next week, the same journalist asked him what podcast he's been listening to, and it's like that. The journalist obviously wants to build a rapport, but
and he knows
he's the manager.
Yeah,
he's the manager, and he said, "Look, I'm not here to review your podcast for you. You find your own bloody podcast." So it was a way of sort of with keeping the journalist at arm's length, saying we're not on the same. We've got a job to do, but we're not. I'm a manager. I'm a football manager, and I need to be taken seriously, right? So that was a joke last week. It doesn't continue on. So he just managed to do it in a way that wasn't like making him come across as really tetchy and standoffish, but it was also saying, "Come on, absolutely, yeah."
You're right. It was very much like, come on, it's not because I'm not going to come up with a podcast meme here. Like it was a one-off joke at the time. Let's make this a thing, and it's just like focusing him, because obviously there's an element in football anyway. You need to stop remembering last week, carry on looking forward anyway. I know it's only about podcast talk, but you can't recall in press conferences from 2-3 weeks ago, blah blah blah. Like, you need to look forward a little bit. Even it's like a mentality thing, isn't it? So I sort of get that. I mean, and to be honest, like the proof is sort of in the pudding, because like 5-2 at the weekend. You're currently ahead of Arsenal on the table. I know it's only goal difference, but that must be nice, man. Like the title challengers, and you're second in the table. 11 goals scored as well. Only Brighton and City. City have matched that. Brighton scored more, but the football right now, the result. What did you make of the game at the weekend?
Impeccable. When we were 5-1 up, there was a period in about 20 minutes into the second half, and I was like, I can't believe what I'm seeing with my own eyes. Every time we went forward, we looked like we were going to score. And the way we went forward, it wasn't like direct. It was passing through. Basuma was linking up with Maddison. And they were just creating chance after high-quality chance after chance, not half chances, opportunities for us to score in. And like I said, with the subtext to years of hoping that we score, that we might find a way, to this is deliberate. That when we were 5-1 up against a team that obviously they haven't got a point yet, but this is, these were champions of the championship and full of confidence, and Kompany is a good manager. But when he tried, what was really satisfying, when he tried to change, he went to a back three in the second half, is Postecoglou tweaked, and it made us even more better and more satisfying. And it was just, really refreshing and just wonderful to see us play great football and win. And there were just performances all over the pitch that was just superb.
That pass from Porro to Son for the goal after that ended. The Maddison
that was on the back of a 20 pass move, which you don't actually see.
You must be absolutely delighted with James Maddison, not just because obviously he's been great, but the context of it. Like, it feels like if he'd gone 2 months later, he'd be going for 70 million instead. Because at least, even though they were relegated, you still would have been able to claim something like that because the football in the market went crazy. Maddison now at 40 million. Looks an absolute snip, and I think there was rumours that City were sort of watching him, but they weren't sure what Gundogan was going to do as well, so they didn't really go in for it and stuff. But landed an absolute gem there because he looks like he's sort of taking the reins a little bit, obviously ahead of Basuma, and he's loving it, isn't he? He's absolutely loving it.
Yeah, it's mad how quickly he settled in, what I mean, I don't know how if this is common knowledge outside of the Tottenham fan base, but James Maddison's actually our vice captain. Along with Romero. So we've got two vice captains. Scott is our captain, So he's obviously been given responsibility and leadership, and he's still young. I think he's 26, so it's still like he's like the most mature member. But if you look at the age of our squad, he is up there, along with Son and a couple others. He's a senior member. So for him to come in and be made vice captain immediately, it just shows that change in ideals and change in atmosphere was important, and bringing in new ideas and new blood was important. And he's just the banter he has with the players and the other fans and our fans is important, but also just his ability on the ball. It's something we've been crying out for since Eriksen left.
He's brilliant,
and he is superb. And just this is a little side note. We actually got him for 30 million because we gave him Winks, and Winks cost 10 million. So if you like it like that, that's essentially had Maddison for 30 million. But we needed him. Without him, it would have been much more difficult to cope with the loss of Harry Kane.
Yeah, and he's been excellent. That goal as well, the finish from to put it in the back of the net from 20 odd yards out, just as if he was just passing into the bottom corner, is ridiculous stuff. And of course, Son, he stepped up, a hat trick as well. And then you look around the team, and was like Pedro Porro just looks like an excellent find. How good? Go on.
Well, we worried about Porro whether or not we're going to be too weak defensively. So you got Dogi, he's a left wing back we bought from Udinese, who's playing left back, and you got Porro who's playing as a right back. Now you'll be familiar with inverted fullbacks and what they do and how important they need to be in terms of being comfortable on the ball and how they're a massive part of the build up for the attack. But Porro and Udogie are without doubt our starting fullbacks now, and that was surprising because I was almost convinced that Emerson Royal would be our right back for the season. Yeah, we're really impressed with him. Very excited. Very, very, very attack-minded fullback. Really, just his philosophy is to get forward as much as possible and as quickly as possible.
Of course, as well. What were your expectations at the start of the season? Or I guess what are they now is probably a more fair question because it's changed so much. I mean, I wouldn't blame you for being a little bit confused at the start of the season. You don't know how it's going to go, but it's been a whirlwind few weeks already. You're currently sat second in the table, 10 points from 4 games. And only that, the only push drop was first day of the season, draw away at Brentford. There's no shame in that, of course. Then you beat Bournemouth, beat United 2-0 as well. Then obviously 5-2 at the weekend. Like, how good are Spurs right now? What is the aim? Because you look around the Premier League at the moment, and we're going to get on to some of the other teams in a minute, but in general, it's quite a weird season so far.
the start of the season, we would have taken 7th, 6th, and a new brand of football and enjoying our football club again. Now it's like, well, let's just wait and see. There's no pressure. No one expects us to finish in the top 4. And these expectations will change. And that media narrative will change around Tottenham if we can consistently stay in that top 4 and we are around there at Christmas. Because then the expectation, the narrative changes, and then the fans start changing the way they think. From my perspective, whatever will be, will be. I'm just happy to have a football club that I love again. I've always loved Spurs, but it was almost like a love-hate relationship because, when your dad's in the house and he's Antonio Conte and he's, essentially a domestic terrorist, it's difficult to love, right? But now it's just, stepdad's here and he buys presents and he feeds us well. And
the cool stepdad, big hand.
He's a cool stepdad.
He really is.
Your actual dad was so I don't know if I swear. But look, that's what I want. I want a football club that I can identify with and I can enjoy watching play and one that I enjoy talking to my mates about because I spend so much of my week talking about Spurs. To actually have a Tottenham back which we can talk with optimism and love is so refreshing, and that's all I essentially want. But based on what I've seen this season and the warnings we got from other fans, especially Celtic fans, saying, "Look, don't worry." The amount of chat I've had from Celtic fans saying, "Look, we're furious that he's gone. We hate the fact that he's not here anymore. But this is what you can expect. It is going to be rocky at the beginning. You will concede goals. It will be difficult because what he's asking of the players isn't easy to implement. It's quite a complex tactical system.
Yeah.
But when it clicks, it will click. And what will happen is that you may lose a couple of games early on, and then you start seeing amazing performances against lesser teams like Burnley, like Bournemouth. Maybe you could call them lesser teams, I guess. And then it will click against a good team, and then you will beat a good team, and then you'll go, now I understand that this could work, and that's potentially what could happen against Arsenal in a couple of weeks.
I'm Googling right now when are we playing Spurs because you always beat us anyway. So
No. Yeah. So the irony in all this is
2nd
that
December.
Manchester City will score against Spurs at White Hart Lane this season, I think.
Finally, that's it. Yeah. There we go. It's actually the 20th of April. At White Hart, So it's a while away, and that's 5 games left of the season. So. I wouldn't be surprised if it's a season where actually you do really well, but then the Spurs for our hoodoo ends or something like that. I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, I mean the beautiful irony of football. But if we manage to finish in the top 4 in Postecoglou's first season, that would be I'd be in a dream world.
Yeah, absolutely,
dream world.
Masoom with a super chat, by the way, he says, "Morning, Flav. Can you guys let us win at Spurs this season? We'll make sure Arsenal don't win the league. We only move forward, slugs in the wild."
Can I just say I'm eternally grateful to Manchester City. I found everything I've ever said about them spending their way to the successes and all the horrible things I've said about Man City in the past. I take it back because last season I was practically a Man City fan. Towards the end. I was watching because Spurs was just nothing, right? And the only thing that I had jeopardy in was making sure that Arsenal didn't win the league. And I watched every minute of every single one of Man City's last 5 or 6 games. And can I tell you how good it was watching a team that was really good and going, I want these guys to win, and then they do it. It was amazing. So thank you, Stephen. I know you had nothing to do with it, but thank you and your club.
Pass on them for thanks to Pep, It's funny because your audience here is clever because I know there's some guy in the chat who just not a fan of you because obviously this guy chats so much rubbish about City. And Marif with the super chat as well saying, why do players join Spurs, never win anything? Well, it's true right now, but you never know this season, mate. You never know.
Hold on a minute. So why the players join Spurs, they never win anything? And you happen to choose Manchester City once they had the money, is that right? Or were you like Stephen, birthed into it before the money?
I think that's the reaction he probably wanted either way. But I mean, what I would say to Spurs is they got a phenomenal stadium, and Spurs, it's a great place to like. And obviously, Spurs are a big team. I'm not stupid, they got Ange, so they got the Ange Ball revolution. We'll see how it goes, once again, looking around the table again, I feel like it should get onto Chelsea a little bit because if you look around, I know they weren't top 4 last season, but they're a team that many people were going, they'll do it this year because they have to, because they spent £1 billion. And I know as a City fan, but we were never that crazy, you know. Like we've never been.
How you spent it correctly. There seemed to be a deliberate nature to the way.
And over a course of several years, you know, and this is over a course of 1 year, and it's been absolutely mental. Of course, as well, the weekend, so they lost 1-0 to Forest. They were the slightly better team, but I'm looking at the stats there. 2 shots on target. Forest had 3. Caicedo, of course, with a mistake led to Lang going through. What have you made of the Chelsea project, so to speak, and that start? I mean, Pochettino, your man as well.
He's not my man. But,
really? Is he dead to you now?
Yes, absolutely. He once managed my football club. That's about as far as the relationship now goes. Well, look, the problem isn't Pochettino. The problem is, I'm not going to say anything that everybody doesn't know, is that you cannot operate the way Todd Bowley has operated.
Mental.
There's a reason why clubs don't do what he's done. It's not like he's come up with this new way of operating. All the other clubs are going, how are you doing this? Amortization of a transfer is something that exists and has existed since time immemorial. It's just that people choose not to do it in football because the risk is so high, right?
Yeah.
So you look with Mudryk, he's on an 8-year deal. He looks an absolute flop at the moment. He may come good. Caicedo, he was incredible for Brighton last season. He looks terrible in a Chelsea shirt. He may come good. It's fine. He may do, right? But what Todd Bowley has done is he has to. He has to come good. Otherwise, we are in big trouble. Mudryk has to come good. Otherwise, we're in big trouble. When Torres was the best number 9 in the world for Liverpool, one move to Chelsea made him one of the worst. Yeah. One move. Because the system didn't work. The environment didn't work. The manager didn't know how to use him properly. And he went from being that in an environment that completely suited him to that in a one that it didn't. The speculation from the club is still there. So it could work brilliantly for Chelsea, but the risk is so high that the likelihood is that it won't.
There's no logic, is there, to signing that many players at the same time? I mean, like, cause the reason you don't sign that many at the same time is because what happens if they don't work and you've already signed loads more? You just you need to wait to see how things go, don't you? You need to add a little bit. It's like sort of like cooking a meal and going, should we just throw in every ingredient at the same time and see what happens? Like, no, you meant to add a little bit of salt and then wait, and then you try a little bit of that, and then you're like. You don't. It's just mental to just go put everything in, and keep doing it. And I'm sure the meal will be great. Like, no, of course it's not. Everything needs a little bit of time to cook, and you need to see. Well, what if you sign 2 midfielders and you play them together and go, actually, they're not really working well together. If you sign 6, and like you've not found anything, and you've got all these players looking around. Like there was a shot of Romeo Lavia and one of the other players on the bench, sat there in the stands, looking really miserable. And I'm sure it was just fitness related, but I'm thinking. That also could genuinely be just logistics right now because they've got too many players. You know, it's not a normal way to do things. Go on.
How are they going to keep the players happy? If they don't perform, how are they going to offset that debt? They've got they've committed a future 75 players they've already spent. That's how much they have spent for the next 8 summers. 75 million before they buy another player. Now, you could say that they've got saleable assets and whatnot, but the reality is they've committed now, and just, I mean, obviously to go back to the football and the Forest game is that it's not on Pochettino yet, and there are some Chelsea fans saying get rid of him. It's not going to change. You could have Pep Guardiola go in there, and he would have similar problems. He maybe has to get it right quicker than most other managers, but the problem isn't the manager. The problem isn't even in the quality of players, like you said, Stephen. You're chucking so many ingredients into a recipe, and you're going to destroy the meal. So he might get it right. He might take it. It's going to take time, but their prospects for this season don't look great as it stands. Like as football, it makes idiots of us all. And next week they could go on a 10-game winning streak. But based on what I've seen thus far, I'd be surprised if that happened.
Yeah, I just don't see it. There's no reason why. Well, maybe there is, but. I mean, you look at the team and it's still sort of. It looks like it does need needs a lot of players still. I mean, given what they want to be, and you'd understand if Chelsea fans and Chelsea as a club we're cool with building slowly with a bunch of young players, but there's nothing that suggests at all that that's what Chelsea are going to do, and that's what the fans will be comfortable with because they've been literal Champions League winners a few years back, and they've won titles and so on. Like they're not happy just pushing around the Europa League, and like they're not at all. And that's the thing is like you look at that squad still, and like well. It's still there's players on the bench I'd never heard of for Chelsea, and until recently, and that seems wild. And there's a lot of them, and it's just I don't know who David Washington is. I'm sorry, I just don't. And that's maybe or Lucas Bergstrom, and maybe that's my lack of knowledge there. But it does feel like all that money spent.
I would say 95% of fans don't either. Yeah, I mean, look, I'll ask you a question, right? Chelsea would have aspirations based on their spending to be somewhere near Manchester City this season.
Yeah.
Name one player apart from Casado that you would have even looked at.
Well, exactly. I mean, that's it.
One of them. Like even as Spurs, I'm looking at them going.
They're all just prospects, aren't they? Maybe Nico Jackson would have been a decent little signing, given that Kane went for you and that's it, as a striker. But you wouldn't be banging down the door, would you? No.
What I mean, Chelsea fans they're telling me that they would keep Nicholas Jackson ahead of Son if there was a swap on the table. Of course, they would take Son.
Chance. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy, and
madness where they find themselves.
I can't see anything other than Pochettino being sacked by December. I just can't see it. I know that sounds mental, but I just can't see it. I can't see any other scenario because you can't spend that money. And as you said, they've already spent 70 million for the next few transfer windows already. And we can talk about them being saleable assets, but we know how an 80 million player can become a player out on loan forever. We can't sell Joao Cancelo. We can't move him on, and he was the best left back in the world for a couple of seasons.
I know, it's crazy. I mean, it's the same thing with Richarlison. Like we can't put him in a team because he effectively makes it weaker. We spent £60 million, so what do? You can't. If you leave him on the bench, his value just evaporates. So we're in the same sort of situation. But you look at Cole Palmer. Like I like Cole Palmer. I think he's a good player. I think he's a great prospect, and he will be an excellent Premier League player. But he was bought, and Pochettino didn't even want him. Because he said the exact same thing as Conte. It was just a club signing. The club wanted him. The minute managers start talking like that, there's issues.
Yeah,
because there's a lack of communication and relationships breakdown.
And the thing is as well, Cole Palmer, because he's a City lad, and I was gutted when he went. But even then, I was gutted when he went. But I was under no illusions that he was still a backup player for us. Of course he was. And if he's 50 million to go at 40 odd million for Chelsea, and he's become a key player, I mean this with the greatest respect. He isn't that yet, and he could be, but he isn't that yet. And it's just scattergun, and it's crazy. And they're going to be. I can't see him top four. I just can't see it. I just don't think they have the structure or the
as it stands.
Yeah, absolutely not. Looking at two other teams, you'd think would be up there. What did you make of the controversy yesterday surrounding Arsenal United? I found it weird Ten Hag arguing with parallax, which is crazy. The idea of not understanding angles, and it felt like a debate from years ago. There was, of course, if you didn't know what was going on, if you're watching this now, there was Garnacho threw on goal, scored in the 89th minute. It should have been a winner. It's not the last minute anymore. Let's be honest with the way football works. It's the last 20% of the game still, which is genuinely wild. But that's where we're at these days. But it was ruled out for offside. You think people wouldn't be arguing that much with lines anymore? But what did you stand on that goal? Did you think this fair or not? Or what
well, look, it was probably offside, marginally offside. And this is coming from a person who was desperate for it to be onside. when that went in, I was jumping around my living room like it was Spurs that had scored, right? So I didn't. It's not me. I wanted it to be onside, but it was marginal, but it probably was offside. And like you say, arguing with the system is pointless now because it is what it is.
Yeah.
The fact that Ten Hag was arguing with the system and is now scapegoating Sancho, if you believe what's
going on there.
But the bigger problem wasn't any of that. The bigger problem was that watching Manchester United yesterday was like watching Sean Dyche's Burnley. That's what it was like. I was like, what is happening? Surely you have the quality to get out to some degree. Arsenal just played with them for 90 minutes, and Manchester United were just hoping to trying to get out, and there didn't seem to be any deliberate system. And I don't think Ten Hag is the guy. I really don't. No. I think I'm really starting to believe that he can't cut it at this level.
Watch. I think he might be, that's the thing. But the thing is, you're right.
Man United fans will not have it. But that's what I feel. I don't think you've got as good a manager as you think you have.
The alarm bells for me are that he pretty much only signs players that he's worked with, which is not always, but he's signed a lot of players that he's worked with in the past, which is it feels a little bit archaic to do that because you're just following around what you know, and it's sort of the eye test over anything else. And but also, well, Postecoglou is a great example. Like he's gotten playing great football within weeks. And you look at United, and they've spent an awful lot of money. And you don't really sort of know what their style is. And I think a lot of people were expecting, coming from Ajax to see this progressive, exciting possession-based football. It's not even that. It just seems sort of like low block, hit Rashford on the counter. And he's good at that, don't get me wrong. But it's just, when you look at the players they've got, and with all due respect, like that Bruno Fernandes, Marcus Rashford, Christian Eriksen, Casemiro, like these are really good players. I'm not saying they're the best in the world, but some of them are excellent. And like,
well, they're some of the better players in the league. Bruno Fernandes, you would argue.
Exactly, and they're more than enough there to actually do something progressive and make some chances that aren't just sort of sitting on the counter. And like, he's another one. Like, I don't like the Sancho thing is that. Look, if Sancho's making that statement to the press after Ten Hag's comments, and I actually thought Ten Hag's comments, I actually watched the video, they weren't that bad. He just they've been taken a bit out of context, and I'm not trying to defend him sake because I'd rather United just rot and burn. I don't care. But it's one of those things where I'm like, he was sort of said, others in training was sort of felt they were ahead a little bit. It wasn't like he was terrible in training. It was a bit more like, I just picked the squad a bit. And he struck me as a coach and player just not talking. As in, you can tell that there's a lack of communication there or whatever, because it felt like he had his character affronted and felt a need to put out a notepad online, and it doesn't look good. It doesn't look good to me, because whichever way you paint it, Sancho is too big a profile and too expensive of a name to, like, he's put it this way, if it was random kid on the bench, no one would really care. But it was Palestri or whatever. But it's not. It's Sancho, and even though he's not been a big part, he's a big name, isn't he? So.
Well, yeah, he's a massive name. They've bought poorly. Casemiro is fading. They started a game in 2023 with Harry Maguire and Johnny Evans as their centre-back pairing against one of the best attacking teams in the Premier League. What is going on to enable that to happen? Yeah. And they've signed a third-choice left-back at Spurs who wouldn't go near our first team. And I get they need cover.
Reguilon.
The Reguilon going to Man United on loan is bizarre to me. So there's a lot wrong. There's a lot wrong there. And what seemingly happens in the Man United fan base is that when they go on a bad run, it's about the Glazers again. Yeah. Now, I get the Glazers are conventional owners, and a lot of them want the majority of Manchester United fans, I'd imagine, want Glazers out. But the reality is that they've spent heavily on this squad. Yeah. I know the training ground's shit. Sorry, I don't know if I can swear. I know the training ground's no good, and I know the stadium needs massive sort of upheaval and refreshing, and probably needs to be rebuilt to some degree. But in terms of the playing staff, they have invested. There has been huge money, and the issue right now isn't the fact that Glazers haven't invested in this team. The issue is the management has allowed this to happen, where Johnny Evans is suddenly required in a Premier League match for Manchester United. And whoever chose that away kit needs to be absolutely strung up.
It's horrific.
It's like a slash between Juventus and Udinese. What does that have to do with Manchester United?
And more than that, it's just really bad. It's just a terrible kit. It's like the funny thing is, actually, when you look at it, it's like a weird, analogy for Man United. There's too much going on. If you look at it closely, it's about 5 different fonts given all the sponsors and so on. The lines sort of break up and intersect because they have to put a sleeve sponsor on. You're like, none of it makes sense. It feels like there's just too much going on in it. It's like, well, that sort of rings true for a lot of teams in the Premier League. Flav, we'll leave it there, mate. Final question, given everything we just talked about. Spurs top 4, can it happen? Will it happen?
Can it happen? Of course it can happen. Will it happen? Yes.
I think you're right.
I think you need to ask me whether or not we can win the league.
Can you win the league, mate? I was gonna put the title of the video, actually. Can Spurs challenge for the title? But then I think I went for the Ange Ball resolution. But maybe we should do that instead. Maybe it's a better title.
Definitely do that. It's just the reason it's slug farming, isn't it? Slug farming. You got to get them in.
Yeah. I'll do it right now. I'll change the title after the video. Mate, thank you very much for coming on. It's been a pleasure as always. I know you're melting in your office there, so go and get a cold shower or something. You'll need it after Ange Ball anyway. Guys, thank you for watching this video. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and all the usual stuff. And I'll catch you next week for another episode of The Rivals. For now, go watch the 5 things learned from yesterday, and have a wonderful day. In a bit, bye bye.